At the head of the table, standing tall in his military uniform, Ibrahim Traoré was calmly listening to the offers for his nation's most valuable treasure. His life had started as a simple diamond mine worker who had now become one of Africa's most powerful leaders. Western company CEOs had come to buy the mine where his father had died, but not all of the people at the table were raising their hands. The meeting was held in the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. Mr. President, Atlantis Mining offers $1.2 billion in cash and a 20-year technology transfer to your country for the Blue Diamond Mine, stated Charles LeBlanc. This will have diplomatic and economic consequences, he said, his face heated. Traoré, President, your nation lacks the technology necessary to run such a mine independently at this time. Traoré grinned. You're wrong. More than 200 mining and geology engineers have received training at Burkina Faso Technical University during the last 2 years, Mr. LeBlanc, and work on our lithium processing facility has already started. Lewis interrupted Mr. President, suggesting that this was a hurried choice. Maybe you ought to reevaluate our offer. Not even 5% of the true worth is included in your offer. Traoré said, Mr. Wei, at least $50 billion is the value of the lithium reserves at Blue Diamond, which make about 15% of the world's current known reserves. Wilson's face palled. This is not impossible. Mr. Wilson, just a fact that you believed only you were aware of. I'm giving you our actual offer now that I've opened a folder on the podium. Burkina Faso will continue to own the operating rights to the Blue Diamond Mine, but we are open to international collaborations for marketing and processing. These are our terms. Outside the conference hall, the journalists were furiously taking notes as they observed the proceedings in amazement. This was a historic moment for all of Africa, not just Burkina Faso. Military forces from Burkina Faso had already encircled the Atlantis mine. The French Foreign Ministry denounced Burkina Faso's decision as an inappropriate nationalization and warned sanctions after mining security troops were disarmed, and the operation was concluded without any casualties that afternoon. The spokeswoman for the U.S. State Department. The security of foreign investment is threatened by Burkina Faso's unilateral conduct. To defend the interests of American businesses, we are weighing all available legal measures. In a more circumspect statement, the Chinese Foreign Ministry expressed the hope that all sides will resolve their differences through communication. Traoré called a meeting of his Palace Finance Emergency Cabinet. Minister Konabo was worried that our accounts had been frozen by French banks. Our loans have been halted by the World Bank and IMF. As anticipated, our foreign exchange reserves are limited. Foreign Minister Traoré, we're getting messages of support from the African Union. The leaders of Mali, Niger, and Guinea have stated their support for our decision, and the BRICS countries are sending encouraging signals. We need to explain this to our people. Traoré activated Plan B, implement the agreements we signed with Russia and Iran, and requested the first batch payment for lithium in gold. Traoré, tonight, the people of Burkina Faso gathered around their televisions to see me speak on national television. Traoré spoke calmly but resolutely, my dear citizens. Today, we opened a new chapter in our nation's history. The Blue Diamond Mine is now fully ours. For years, they only showed us the diamonds, hiding the lithium deposits, which are the true treasure. In front of the camera, he displayed his father's blue diamond fragment. In remembrance of him and the thousands of Burkinabe laborers who perished in this mine, we recovered these resources today, but the days ahead will not be easy. Western nations may exert economic pressure on us. Prices may increase and certain things may become scarce, but we will stand united because we are willing to pay the price for freedom. Following the speech, thousands of people gathered in the streets of Ouagadougou to celebrate Burkina Faso's daring move. The people of Hulka, Burkina Faso, rose 1 week after the signing ceremony, and international sanctions went into effect. Western banks severed their connections with Burkina Faso, and loan arrangements were frozen by the IMF. Traoré assembled his team in his royal office after being branded as radical and dangerous by the French, American, and Chinese media. We were ready, and now we're moving on to phase 2 of the economy. Our dollar reserves are running low, and we're having trouble importing, so Minister Dio seems concerned that our people might not be able to satisfy their basic necessities as we anticipated. Traoré, for this reason, we have been putting the Food Independence Program into practice for the last 3 years, and our farmers are now able to provide 80% of our basic food needs. Defense French intelligence has started arming certain opposition groups, according to Minister Urango. There is movement in a number of northern regions, and we have educated our people and bolstered our troops, said Traoré. The following day, if required, we will defend every village and neighborhood. Brazil and Russia inked new trade deals with Burkina Faso. We just need time, Traoré told his people, when a Chinese independent group promised to construct a lithium processing facility, and Turkey volunteered to supply mining equipment. The first lithium from the Blue Diamond mine will enter the international market in 3 months. Until then, we must resist together. A movement known as the Traoré model began, particularly among young Africans, when hashtags like Our Blue Diamonds and Africa Eye Showers trended globally on social media. Despite claims by Western media, the Tri was committing economic suicide. Support messages started to arrive from other African nations, including Mali-Guinea, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and South Africa, who made statements endorsing Burkina Faso's sovereign right. The first major crisis occurred 3 weeks later. General Boubacar tried a French-backed coup at midnight, encircling the presidential palace with a small military force. But Traoré's intelligence was ready, and the attempt was put down in a matter of hours. National television footage showed General Boubacar and other coup plotters detained, and documents found showed that French intelligence had funded the coup scheme. This incident increased public support for Traoré even more. Crowds of people chanted for Traoré's death, but Traoré decided against executing Boubacar and instead called him to testify in a live broadcast. General Boubacar said, "Today, I want to ask you not your punishment, but why you betrayed your country." To which Traoré replied tremblingly, "The French gave me 5 million euros, promising me a luxurious property in Europe and a new life. However, what about your nation's freedom and the future of your people? What are they worth?" The commander bowed his head and stated, "This is the best illustration of how the West dominates Africa." Traoré, turning to the cameras, "They use our own flaws to separate us." This incident has had an impact on public opinion around the world. Although France denied any role in the coup attempt, the evidence was unmistakable. Freedom has a price, my brothers and sisters, but it is less than the price of centuries of exploitation. For 6 months, the people of Burkina Faso faced hardships, including shortages of some basic goods, rising prices, street protests, and Traoré's evening addresses on national television. Many citizens in Western countries started to doubt their government's role in such activities. Burkina Faso is open to international markets under fair trade conditions, but we will never give up control of our resources. At the end of the 6th month, an unexpected development in the global economy occurred. Electric vehicle manufacturers started to face serious difficulties with lithium supply prices rising quickly, and the Blue Diamond's lithium reserves were now more valuable than ever. Traoré held a meeting open to the international press. However, there were also difficult challenges within the nation during this process. For example, the operation of the Blue Diamond Mine proved to be more complicated than anticipated technical issues. The first breakthrough came from the German automotive giant Volkswagen, which signed a direct agreement with Burkina Faso, promising to establish a technical training center in the country in exchange for lithium supply. Other companies followed: Tesla, Ford, Toyota, and other major automotive manufacturers. Logistical challenges and a lack of personnel were impeding production. Traoré frequently visited the mine day and night, and one evening, while working late in his mine office, he collaborated with engineers to try to resolve issues on the site. The elderly miner, Konite, came on the door and said, "Mr. President, I wanted to talk to you." "Please, Konite. I owe you a lot. My father also worked in this mine. We provided the wealth of our land to foreigners for 3 generations, but we're not giving it to them anymore," Konite and his father stated as they gazed out the window. "Yes, this riches is ours now, but it's not enough to say that Konite running the mine is only the first step. What matters most is how we spend this money." Konite took a tiny notepad out of his pocket and wrote down the names of every mine employee who had died, become ill, or become crippled during the previous 30 years. Traoré took the notebook, turned the pages, and saw hundreds of names and hundreds of lives. "What should I do, Konate? Give these individuals and their families a portion of the mine's profits, and establish a fund that benefits all miners, not just them. Retirement rights, health insurance, education, and scholarships." Traoré nodded. "And you're correct. Regaining the mine alone is insufficient. Justice must also be upheld." Traoré called a cabinet meeting the following day and issued directives for the creation of the Miners' Justice Fund. The improvement of miners and their families' living conditions would get 15% of Blue Diamond's profits. The World Bank and IMF removed the sanctions 8 months later. Western banks resumed their cooperation with Burkina Faso, albeit on different conditions. A year after the Blue Diamond Mine was nationalized, a brand new community grew up around it. Modern housing, schools, and hospitals were constructed, and a new living area was created for over 2,000 workers and their families. Burkina Faso's first lithium processing facility was rising nearby, and engineers from China and Russia were training local teams while young Burkinabe engineers learned complex processing procedures. The new mining agreements, known as the Blue Diamond Model, stipulated that the majority stake in natural resources would remain with the host countries. Young people from all across the nation, who were all enrolled in the recently founded Blue Diamond Technical Academy, joined Traoré on a morning visit to the mine. This mine is now more than simply a mine. "This is a symbol of our independence and our future," Traoré said to the pupils. The students visited several areas of the mine and observed the quality control labs, diamond processing facilities, and lithium extraction process. Traoré was approached by one of the mine's oldest employees, who said, "Mr. President, I want to show you something." The worker led Traoré to an old part of the mine where the 1994 collapse occurred. A small monument with the names of the workers who perished in the accident written on it read, "We will never forget them anymore." At the top of the monument was the name of Amara Traoré, who said, "We will never forget them anymore." Traoré touched his father's name, and his eyes welled with tears. "Thank you," he said quietly. That day, a special ceremony was held at the mine, and the first batch of lithium extracted from Blue Diamond was ready to be exported in processed form. The mine was worth about $500 million. Traoré stated, "Today we're not just exporting a mineral, we're declaring our independence, our dignity, and our right to determine our own destiny to the world. 1 year later, Traoré was at his father's grave, with the first graduates of the newly founded mining academy, all young Burkinab. "My father left me a small blue diamond," Traoré told the young people, but that wasn't his true legacy. The international journalists who attended the ceremony were astounded that a move they had called madness a year earlier had now turned into a success. The true legacy was the conviction that the richness of our territories belonged to us. In the distance, the Blue Diamond Mine's new facilities could be seen. All of the workers were Burkinab, and the mine's earnings were being utilized to upgrade the nation's infrastructure, healthcare, and education systems. A young miner came forward and said, "We would like to give you something, Mr. President." Traoré was given a small box containing a blue diamond ring engraved with his father's name. The young miner stated, "We now provide health insurance and education scholarships to the family of every worker in the mine, so no one will have to grow up without a father." Traoré then put the ring on his finger. "When my father died in the mine when I was 8 years old, I told Traoré that day, and I promised myself that one day the wealth of our nation would belong to our own people." On the same day, a new facility called the Amara Traoré Lithium Processing Plant was opened next to the Blue Diamond Mine. This was Africa's first full-capacity lithium processing facility, and leaders from all over the world attended the opening ceremony. By then, Burkina Faso had established itself as a respected power in international relations, and as Charles Leblanc watched the ceremony on television, a message appeared on his phone. After Traoré's action, Burkina Faso's narrative became an inspiration for other African nations, and within 2 years, 5 additional countries took similar actions. Atlantis Mining's shares had lost 40% of their value, and the firm was on the verge of bankruptcy. This strategy, referred to as the Traoré model, was thought to mark the start of a new age in international relations. Nigeria regained control of its oil reserves, South Africa's platinum riches, the Democratic Republic of the Congo's cobalt mines, and at an African Union summit, Traoré spoke to other leaders about how our natural resources have the ability to alter our course in life, but they only truly generate prosperity for nations who can process them and make them valuable to the rest of the world. Western nations employed a variety of tactics to thwart Africa's emerging economic independence movement. Some nations encouraged military takeovers, while others experienced economic problems. Yet, Burkina Faso's achievements served as a model for other nations. Charles Leblanc was forced to leave his large company, and in his final interview, he said, "Perhaps the era of dominating Africa's resources has ended." 5 years later, Traoré was invited to speak at an international mining conference in London, where the same Western media that once characterized him as radical and dangerous now described him as visionary and reformist. His former rival, Robert Wilson, was also present. Wilson had resigned from his position as CEO of Liberty Resources and was now working as an independent consultant. "President Traoré," Wilson said, extending his hand, smiling, and shaking his hand. "We met 5 years ago, Mr. Wilson. As you recall," he lowered his head, "but we didn't understand one another. However, now that I see how wise your strategy was for managing Africa's resources, I appreciate you demonstrating this understanding, even if it was late." Traoré during the meeting, the presentation Traoré delivered was titled "The Burkina Faso Model for Sustainable Mining." The executives of the mining firm in the hall were curious to find out how a tactic they had previously dismissed as insane had worked. 5 years later, Burkina Faso had completely transformed, with new contemporary structures emerging in the capital city of Ouagadougou and the construction of clean water systems, schools, and clinics in the countryside. The nation's GDP tripled, child mortality rates were cut in half, and the literacy rate increased from 40% to 75%. Every year, students from all across Africa studied at the Blue Diamond Mine, which was transformed from a mine into a center for education and technology. One morning, when Traoré returned to his father's grave by himself, he removed the blue diamond ring from his finger and laid it on the gravestone. "Your mission is complete, father," he whispered softly. As Traoré stood on the palace balcony that night, gazing out over the city, the lights of Ouagadougou seemed brighter than ever. He held the piece of blue diamond that his father had left him, and he whispered, "Do you see, father? We're building a country you couldn't even dream of." In the distance, the lights of the Blue Diamond Mine were shining, and for Traoré, these lights symbolized not wealth flowing outward, but power staying within the nation. He thought of his father's words as he examined the blue diamond piece. "Son, true wealth is not in the land, but in the hearts of the people living on that land, and now this wealth belonged to his people." The astute French CEO is a very giving person in comparison to others with similar intelligence. Louis, the Chinese official seated at the other end of the table, took the floor, but Traoré's demeanor remained unchanged. In addition to Dragon Minerals' $1.4 billion investment, we also commit $200 million for local worker training. American entrepreneur Robert Wilson interrupted. With each offer, Liberty Resources suggests $1.5 billion and a 12% yearly profit share from the mine's operations. With excitement, Kabore, Traoré's economic advisor, made notes that these offers could transform the country's economy. "Thank you, gentlemen," Traoré concluded. "But before I make a decision, I want to hear from you why you want this mine so badly. Because you all know that Blue Diamond is not just a diamond mine." LeBlanc cleared his throat as the room's mood abruptly tightened, eyes darting between one another. "Mr. President, Blue Diamond produces some of the world's highest quality diamonds. The rare blue tones are particularly valuable in the luxury market," he said, asking without moving his eyes from the floor. "Of fact, there are usually several sources of value in mining operations." Wilson noted that a mine's worth is determined by a number of elements, including secondary minerals and logistical infrastructure. Traoré slowly got up and started to move around the conference table. "Gentlemen, I'm going to be honest with you because I knew exactly what Blue Diamond is before coming to these negotiations, and I believe you do too. 3 days ago, I met an elderly miner in northern Burkina Faso named Traoré. He approached the window, and a man named Joseph Konate, who had worked at Blue Diamond 30 years prior, and he told me a fascinating story." LeBlanc's forehead started to perspire a little as the audience fell silent, but before we continue, I'd want to show you a video that said Traoré motioned to his assistant as an image of an elderly man holding a document in his bony hands appeared on the meeting room's large screen. "My name is Joseph Konate, and I worked on the geological research team at Blue Diamond Mine from 1990 to 1995. In 1994, while drilling in the southern portion of the mine, we found a large lithium deposit beneath the main diamond vein. We reported this information to Atlantis Mining, but the company kept it from the public." LeBlanc immediately got up, saying, "This is unacceptable. Who is this man?" "These claims are completely baseless." Traoré calmly said, "Please sit down, Mr. LeBlanc. The video isn't finished yet." Konate went on to say that while I was working with Amara Traoré, we both recognized the importance of this finding, but the management of the corporation ignored our findings. A week later, Amara died in a strange mine accident. I managed to flee, and ever since the screen went dark, I've been hiding." Trey went back to the table and proceeded to open the file before him. Mr. LeBlanc, Mr. Way, Mr. Wilson. The emails between senior executives at Atlantis Mining and the geological studies I have from 1994 all support Konite's assertions. He spread a map from the file onto the table so you could see that the true worth of Blue Diamond isn't derived from diamonds. The CEOs exchanged anxious looks as they discussed how the lithium deposits below make up over 15% of the world's known reserves, and how, in the age of electric vehicles, lithium is far more valuable than diamonds. Wilson cleared his throat, pointing out that these geological evaluations can be conjectural. To confirm the actual reserves, a great deal of research is required. This has already been done. Mr. Wilson stated, "Tear away by your companies, and you know the results." That night, Traoré stood by alone on the royal balcony, holding the sole item his father had left him. 30 years ago, Amara Traoré was a little, matte blue diamond jewel. The French company Atlantis continued to operate the mine without paying any compensation after my father, a simple mine worker, died in a collapse in 1994, leaving us with only this small diamond piece and much suffering. However, before he passed away, he told me something. The true treasure of Blue Diamond is not the diamonds that everyone knows about. Dio looked perplexed. What do you mean by this? In 1994, my father and Konite discovered lithium deposits in the mine. They reported this information to the company management, but the management concealed it. Lithium wasn't as valuable then as it is now, but it was still a valuable resource. Lithium in this, indeed, this is amazing information. And it's currently the key component for batteries used in electric cars, the oil of the future. When my father was working in the mine just before he passed away, he found a separate vein. He told his superiors about it, but they deleted any documentation of this discovery. Traoré held the tiny blue diamond fragment up to the light. How do you know that my father's death wasn't an accident, Dio? Because his co-worker Konite is still alive and has been hiding for years. He reached me last month and told me everything. He also provided me these. In order to understand the value of the lithium resources in the mine, Traoré took an old, worn notebook out of the inside pocket of his jacket. It included my father's geological notes, and he created the first map of them. After looking at the notebook, Traoré remarked, determined, Traoré sees a trap to determine how long Western corporations have been aware of the truth and how they are deceiving us. He went to the balcony's edge and gazed out over the city, where Ouagadougou's lights were gleaming in the nighttime darkness. My father passed away when I was 8 years old. My mother had to raise me by herself. We frequently went without food, were unable to pay for our education, and foreign corporations were stealing our nation's wealth. Dio bowed his head and said, "Now we're going to end this situation," adding that not only Blue Diamond but all of our mines and resources would belong to our people. Burkina Faso's story was one that many African nations shared. Traoré was having a confidential meeting with a few intelligence advisors at midnight. "What about the corporations making the offers?" questioned Traoré. Chief Sankura checked the files in his hand and verified, "Mr. President, that the mine's lithium reserves are at least 20 times the known value. Atlantis, Dragon, and Liberty are known to all three. They all know this information, but they chose not to share it with us." In an internal meeting 2 years prior, the CEO of French company Atlantis LeBlanc stated, "When we acquire Burkina Faso's lithium reserves, our company's value will multiply. We should start with the lowest possible offer, because Africans don't know the true value." The intelligence chief opened a laptop and displayed a few emails on the screen. Traoré's jaw tightened on the other dragon minerals, who also informed the Chinese authorities that lithium reserves, not diamonds, are what give blue diamonds their true value. In a private presentation to Wall Street investors, Liberty referred to the mine as Africa's hidden lithium gold mine. Traoré stood up, and we have a great surprise in store for them for the last meeting tomorrow. Defense, Mr. President. Minister Urago appeared worried that this action would be risky because these corporations have strong states supporting them. France, USA. We are ready for China to inflict both military and economic measures. Traoré stated forcefully that we have been attempting to create alternative trade routes and have entered into confidential agreements with Russia for the past 2 years, Iran, Turkey, and Brazil. Furthermore, we already have the tools and technologies required to establish the lithium processing facility economically. Minister Dio appeared shocked. But how did you do this? I've been getting ready for this day and this moment ever since my father passed away. Intelligence. We've also discovered that Western intelligence services, particularly the French DGSSE, are in contact with some opposition elements in our nation and are laying the groundwork for a potential coup attempt. Names asked Traoré, General Boubacar, Colonel Zeta, and former Economy Minister Traoré all received substantial sums of money from France. Chief Sankura brought another file to the screen, Mr. President. Traoré nodded and said, "Keep an eye on them, but don't touch them just yet. Let's secure the mine first, then deal with the traders inside during the interim in one of the city's upscale hotels." On the phone, Charles Leblanc was speaking. "Don't worry, Traoré is unaware of anything. He will sign the contract tomorrow, and once we begin to use the lithium deposits, Blue Diamond will belong to us. This company's value will increase tenfold." In his private room, Liu was meeting with Beijing. Although Americans and French had also made bids, our president was the highest. Since Traoré is in charge of a nation that is struggling economically, he is unable to turn down the funding. As he sipped his drink in his hotel's bar, Robert Wilson said to the men next to him, "The real power lies in our factories in Detroit, becoming the largest electric vehicle manufacturer in the world once this agreement is signed." They were all unaware that Traoré had already started his scheme. When the signing ceremony preparations were finished the following morning, the world press was prepared to document Burkina Faso's biggest economic deal. Charles Leblanc, Robert Wilson, and Lo Wei entered the hall unsure of which company would win. All three were self-assured. Traoré arrived on time and took the podium saying, "Dignitable guests, we are here today to sign an agreement that will shape the future of our country." Leblanc smiled confidently, "But the agreement we are signing is not the one we discussed yesterday." A murmur rose in the hall. "I would like to announce that we are rejecting the offers of Atlantis Mining, Dragon Minerals, and Liberty Resources." The three CEOs exchanged shocked looks, but today I am announcing the creation of the Burkina Faso National Mining Company, and the Blue Diamond Mine is now fully owned by the Burkina Faso people. Leblanc arose violently and declared, "This is unacceptable. It violates international agreements." Traoré, speaking calmly, is attempting to steal our nation's natural resources by concealing the lithium deposits in the mine from us, even though he is aware of the reserve's actual worth. When Traoré pushed a button, the company's confidential correspondence, geological data, and intricate maps of the lithium resources were shown on the hall's enormous screen. The match is over. Gentleman Leblanc.